What if all the Confederacy's beliefs about safeguarding Vicksburg were built on falsehoods? Deceptions so deep they blinded them to the unstoppable force approaching their fortress, General Grant's unshakable determination and audacious tactics. In this video, we'll reveal the 5 fatal myths the Confederates embraced at Vicksburg and how Grant shattered each one instantly, forever altering the Civil War's trajectory. But before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community and never miss a moment from history's most gripping battles. Ready to uncover the truths they fought to conceal? Let's begin. The Union's mission to capture Vicksburg met numerous challenges. The first offensive took place in May 1862 with a naval strike that failed to silence Confederate artillery positions. The summer's follow-up campaigns also failed to secure a strategic foothold, prompting the appointment of General Ulysses S. Grant to command as winter drew near. During this period, Union engineers began an ambitious project to divert the Mississippi River by carving a canal alongside the city, aiming to bypass Vicksburg's formidable fortifications. Planners of the day believed redirecting the river would lessen the city's military significance by shifting its course. Yet, the undertaking was quickly abandoned due to widespread tropical illnesses such as malaria and dysentery, coupled with oppressive summer heat that weakened many workers. When January arrived, Grant resumed digging under President Lincoln's direct supervision, with daily updates sent to the White House. Although Grant privately doubted the project's success, he valued it for keeping soldiers disciplined and physically prepared for the coming spring operations. Between January and March 1863, 5 more Union offensives, including a naval push up the Yazoo River, failed to breach Vicksburg's defenses. Grant later characterized these defeats as reconnaissance efforts that confirmed the city's near-impregnable position. As work on the canal continued into March, sudden river swells broke through the barriers, flooding the unfinished passage. Union engineers brought in steam-powered dredges to clear and maintain the channel. However, Confederate spotters on the bluffs quickly located these vessels and unleashed precise artillery fire, crippling the operation. This setback forced the complete abandonment of the engineering plan to bypass Vicksburg's defenses. With options dwindling, Grant devised a daring new approach, authorizing an overland advance from the eastern side of the city. To achieve this flanking maneuver, his army had to move behind Confederate lines. The troops began marching south along the river's western bank before attempting the crossing. This bold operation required strong naval cooperation. Rear Admiral David D. Porter's fleet played a crucial role. On the night of April 16th, under heavy Confederate bombardment, Porter guided his armored ships past Vicksburg's guns in a hazardous nighttime run. The first attempt to land at Grand Gulf failed, forcing Union forces to move downstream to Bruinsburg. On April 30th, they crossed there successfully, beginning Grant's incursion into Confederate-controlled Mississippi. Although long-term success required secure supply lines, the soldiers initially relied on the provisions they carried. Historians often highlight Grant's determination during this precarious stage, rooted in his earlier campaigns. In prior attempts against Vicksburg, severed supply lines had forced his troops to live off the land by taking crops and resources from nearby farms. From these experiences, Grant formed the belief that his army could temporarily survive on locally acquired supplies if necessary. Despite common misconceptions, the Union did not fully abandon its supply lines. Confusion arose from Grant's post-war memoirs referencing a break in logistics on May 3rd. Records show there was only a 72-hour gap in supplies between the Bruinsburg crossing and the capture of Grand Gulf on May 3rd. Once Grand Gulf was secured, Grant initiated a creative resupply plan, sending wagon trains loaded with rations and ammunition along an obscure riverside trail through the floodplain. Critics like General Sherman warned this route could not sustain 50,000 soldiers, urging a pause to rebuild supply stores. Grant's reply outlined his combined strategy. While Grand Gulf alone could not fully feed the Army, he intended to supplement carried rations with local resources. Bread and coffee would keep the troops ready for battle until full supply routes were re-established. This calculated risk showcased Grant's adaptability and became critical to the campaign's success. Although Vicksburg remained the ultimate target, Grant advanced with precision. His immediate objective in Mississippi became Port Gibson, which controlled key routes from Grand Gulf to Jackson. Capturing Port Gibson would give the Union control over the Southern Railroad, a vital supply artery for Vicksburg. After the Grand Gulf setback, Confederate Major General John S. Bowen guessed correctly that Grant intended to cross the Mississippi and suspected Port Gibson would be the main focus. Grant countered with a diversion, sending Colonel Benjamin Grierson deep into Confederate territory on a cavalry raid to confuse the enemy. Meanwhile, urgent requests for reinforcements reached Lieutenant General John C. Pemberton, who, following his standing orders, chose to prioritize Vicksburg's defense over sending troops elsewhere. After the river crossing, Union forces split to control the two main approaches to Port Gibson, stretching Confederate defenses thin. Fighting broke out before dawn on May 1st when Union patrols stumbled upon hidden Confederate units near Magnolia Church's dense thickets. Pemberton's delay in sending reinforcements proved costly. Despite strong resistance, the outnumbered Confederate forces suffered heavy casualties and were eventually forced to retreat. In his report, Bowen expressed pride in his troops' bravery but admitted the overwhelming Union numbers could not be overcome. The retreat led to the capture of hundreds of soldiers and the evacuation of Fort Coburn, handing the Union control of the Grand Gulf area. Port Gibson's fall dismantled Vicksburg's defensive outer ring, turning the earlier Grand Gulf failure into a double victory by securing two vital positions. This success opened an uncontested route toward Vicksburg, proving the effectiveness of Grant's step-by-step approach. Grant knew Vicksburg could not be taken without eliminating the enemy's ability to reinforce it. Following Port Gibson, he avoided a direct strike and instead focused on cutting the logistical lifelines feeding the city. His eastern advance relied on isolating Vicksburg before attempting a final assault. The Southern Railroad of Mississippi became the central target. Intelligence reports showed that General Joseph E. Johnston had reached Jackson with reinforcements for Vicksburg. Grant quickly identified Johnston's force as the key danger to his plan. Luck favored the Union when Johnston, convinced the city could not be saved, withdrew to Canton, leaving Jackson weakly defended. On May 14th, Union troops entered the Mississippi capital, dismantling military facilities to deny them to the Confederates. Soon after, Union intelligence intercepted Johnston's orders, directing Pemberton toward Clinton. Though aware of Johnston's real location, Grant moved quickly to prevent the two Confederate forces from uniting. Historians suggest Johnston hoped to sacrifice Vicksburg in exchange for drawing Union forces into terrain better suited for a counterattack. Meanwhile, Pemberton clung to defending Vicksburg, expecting help before the encirclement was complete. Both leaders misjudged events. Johnston's strategy failed, Pemberton's reinforcements never came, and Vicksburg was left alone. After a 47-day siege, its defenders saw no hope of relief. With supplies exhausted and starvation imminent, the Confederate command entered surrender talks. At first, they refused Grant's demand for unconditional surrender, but he eased his stance, offering parole for the garrison. This was a practical choice. Grant lacked the means to hold so many prisoners. Parole allowed the soldiers to return home under oath not to fight again until Union control was secure. With no other options, the Confederates accepted on July 4, 1863. The surrender handed the Union full control of the Mississippi River, cutting the Confederacy in two. This victory marked a decisive turning point, hastening the South's downfall and paving the way for Union victory 2 years later. The capture of Vicksburg was more than a battlefield win. It marked the collapse of the Confederacy's cherished illusions under Grant's relentless pressure. But here's the question. If those myths had been exposed earlier, could the Confederacy have changed its fate? Or was Vicksburg's fall unavoidable from the beginning? What do you think was the one mistake that sealed their defeat? Share your views in the comments below. Let's uncover the past together. And if this exploration gave you new insight, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that challenge what you thought you knew about history. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring,